Jesus, you are the light of the world. You're the light of...
All right, let's get rolling. Let's get rolling. Now, the information that I'm fixing to give you now, you do not have a handout with it. The information I'm fixing to give you now is really specific for the Blueprints curriculum. Now, if you are a member here at Deerfield, you're probably familiar with Blueprints. If you're not a member here at Deerfield, you might not be familiar, but I encourage you to become familiar with it. Blueprints is, there are three things about Blueprints that you do not get in any other curriculum. Number one, what I've done with Blueprints is produce hundreds and hundreds of Bible school lessons. And then churches get a chance to select which specific lessons they want to study. There is no other curriculum where you do that. All other curriculum is produced, bound, you either buy it or you don't. Okay? The second thing, this is the only curriculum whereby the producer of the curriculum does what I am now doing. Workshops that teach you how to teach that particular curriculum. If you order some curriculum from Gospel Advocate or 21st Century, you cannot call them and ask them, can you send the author down here to do a workshop for us? Nobody else does that. And then the third thing that I offer that nobody else offers, if you're using this curriculum and you're scheduled to teach next Wednesday night or Wednesday, you selected the curriculum, and you're going to teach it in July. And as you go through the curriculum, through the lesson, you have a question about what's the best way to communicate that. You can contact me, and I will help you explain that for your class. There's no other curriculum that does that. So those are three advantages that I think are worth it, because every now and then it's not always easy to put on paper the totality of the communicating concept, and sometimes you read something that just doesn't fully click, and I need an explanation. And so we provide that because we want people to be able to maximize the intended purpose from Blueprints. Therefore, let me share a few things with you. Most graduate school work consists of classroom participation. You have to discuss, and writings. Anybody in here worked on a master's degree or a doctoral program? But if you decide to go back for a master's degree, you, my friend, will have to do writing. Now, I don't say that to scare you away, because I am also putting together writing seminars where I will teach people how to do research, even children in high school, how to do research, how to write term papers, how to write graduate papers, how to publish it, how to market a book. I'll be doing a seminar in Tampa on the 26th of April. I know that's a little distant. I'd love for you to ride up to that. But I'd like to come down in this area and do one. I just need 30 people. Now, that one ain't free. It costs you $49 a person. But I need 30 people. I'll drive down here and do the seminar. And then, in addition to the seminar, you get 2 free coaching sessions. So even after I leave, you can still call me and do follow-up, etc. And that's going to lead us into something else that I'm going to putting together, a writing symposium, unique, specific for Church of Christ. So once a year, we'll get all of the folk in the churches of Christ that's writing or want to write. We'll have a symposium because, see, some of you all need to write a book. Some of you all may have already started writing a book. Some of you would write if you said, if I knew how to get it done. That's what I do. I have a publishing packet put together. So I take you from beginning to end. And so that's something I'm working on, so you pray for the success of that. Okay? Now, but if you, writing is not hard once you learn how to do it. But until you learn how to do it, it can keep you up at night. But once you learn how to write, and all of your children, there's no way they're going to get through college without learning how to write. So it's good to send your children to the seminar. And here's a little technique that will help you. Has anyone ever taught you how to underline? You know that learning how to underline will reduce your study time by 60%. You know people go all the way through college and nobody's ever taught them how to underline. You ever seen people underline? They just underline everything. Why would you underline everything? Or they highlight everything. See, if you underline properly, when you go back to study, it'll reduce your study time by at least 60%. You can be much more efficient by learning how to underline. So those types of things that we will be sharing in those seminars. But studies have shown that when people say it and write, it enhances their learning. Let's do that together. Say it, and write. Say it, and write. Say it, and write. See, that's what you got to do. You got to say it and write. So Blueprint's curriculum is designed for you to have to say something and write something. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Now, I'm not talking about what some people do. They get into class and they just talk. They just talk. Now, everything that comes up, they got a comment on it. Clyde Muse called that fooling ignorance. I don't know, you don't know, but we keep talking about what we don't know. What I'm talking about is, in the class, getting some information and then go discuss that information. That's where your learning takes place. Now, here is the format of the class. Who's the teacher here? You teach the adult class here. So who's been teaching blueprints? Okay. All right. So I'm talking directly to you, and everybody else is just hearing you. Okay. And I'm saying that in the sense of this is the intent of the design. The first. Who's seen blueprints? Who has not seen the copy blueprints? Okay. Hold on a second. In every lesson, the last page in every lesson requires you to have a discussion, whatever the lesson was about that day. Requires you to have a lesson with somebody who is in your friend circle, somebody who is in your family circle, someone who's in your faith circle. For example, let's say tomorrow's Sunday school lesson is about forgiveness. Say it's about forgiveness. What is the lesson about tomorrow? Are you serious? Really?
That's not Deerfield. That's
Because I don't know what lesson they got. I do have lessons on forgiveness. Let's use forgiveness then. Okay? All right. The lesson is on forgiveness. So tomorrow you will sit in class and learn what's taught about forgiveness. Before next Sunday, you have to have a discussion with one of your friends about what you all talked about in that lesson. So you go to work and say, hey man, what do you think about forgiving a person before they ask you? And that person's going, you write that down. You go to one of your family members and say, whatever it is you learn in lessons, what do you think about forgiving everybody that mistreats you? Oh, I don't think you ought to forgive people. There's some people you just get. You write that down. You go to somebody who is a Christian. So what do you think about forgiveness? Yeah, it's hard to do. And so you write that down. So at the beginning of the next week, the first 20 minutes of class, we share the basis of our discussion from last week's lesson. So that means every student has to go out and have a conversation. Yes, sir. And then write it down. You can't be in class ad-libbing. You got to have something. And so the teacher, at the beginning of class, teacher, you walk around the room and glance at people's book and make sure they got something written in those books. Because y'all won't write anything if you don't look. Students won't study unless there's exams. Yeah, make the students hold up the book. Look. Tell the person, look over at the person next to you and make sure they got something filled out in that book. Give them back. Yeah, do your work. Your church has spent money on this material. And your teacher has spent time studying it. And then you're going to come in here and you got to do your part. And then you become a good example for your children. So your children see you at home doing your homework. See, if you beat your children for not doing their math homework and then you won't do your church homework. Well, they see you as, okay. So, the first 20 minutes of class, the students share, they read what their discussion consisted of because they went out and talked to somebody about last week's lesson. Now, let me tell you this. If you go talk about the lesson, watch your learning quadruple. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Watch it. If you don't go talk about it, your learning won't do it. Go talk about it. And then it'll amaze you. See, then you'll begin to understand, oh, everybody don't look at forgiveness the way we do. You didn't know that. And now you get a chance to help them. Because after you ask them, what do you think about forgiveness? Well, you think about it. So you get a chance to teach your Sunday school lesson every week to at least 3 people. That's right. Yes, sir. Because just as sure as you ask one of your friends about forgiveness, what he thinks is, he's going to turn right around and ask you what you think. And guess what? You learned in class. Yeah. So now he's going to say, how do you know that? Now you can invite him to Sunday school. Now you can say to him, you know, we got a part 2 on forgiveness next week, man. Come on, go class. So now your Sunday school flourishes. But your learning enhances. And now, at work, people start looking up to you. Because now, you talk to your friend about forgiveness, and he asks you about it. So, he kind of appreciates what you had to say. So now, he discovers next week that he won't forgive his brother. So he's like, man, you need to go talk to him. Man, you need to talk to him, man. He got a grudge against his brother for the past 10 years. So now, he starts opening an opportunity for you to teach the same lesson to him. That's how it's done. Yes, sir. You come to church and get all of this knowledge and then go home and sit on it. Come on. Why would you do that? If you go to Walmart and see a good sale, you tell somebody. You come to church and get good information and go home and keep it. And you know there are people who need to learn how to forgive. You know that. You know that people are struggling with forgiveness. And then you sit at home with their solution and won't give it to them. Shame on you. So the first 20 minutes of class, every Sunday. Now, you can, in the previous week, select 2 or 3 people who are going to come back next week and share, because everybody's not going to get a chance to share. But somebody needs to tell me what happened. What did you discover when you went and talked to people about last week's lesson? And so here's something for you to write. And I have specific questions. The question may be different. For example, this lesson right here is about eternal security. So you ask one of your friends what they think about, can a person be eternally secure? You ask one of your family members, what would you think about me if I told you I'm eternally secure? Discuss with some believers the joy of being eternally secure. So now you get a chance to figure out, this is how people are thinking. But it challenges you, because now you go back and say, are my thoughts correct? Everybody got that? So the first 20 minutes of class is devoted to review of last week's lesson. Everybody got that? First 20 minutes. Devoted. So that means you got to go talk to somebody. So don't come back and say, well, I talked to somebody, but I didn't write nothing down. Well, you sit down and be quiet. This is designed for people who wrote something. Write it down. Because you come back. See, there's some folk who come back, yeah, I know what people are thinking. I talked to somebody 9 years ago, and this is what they told me. Now, we want to know, what did you find out this week when you talked to some people? Because, all right, so now that's the first 20 minutes. Then the rest of the class, you teach today's lesson. The first 20 minutes is called reflection. Since he's teaching this class, would you give him a copy of this? He needs this. He's going to. Okay. The first 20 minutes is, and I'm on page 2. The first part of the class is called reflection. Do you teach also? The duck class? Well, you need a duck. Any other duck? Yeah. Now, if your church is not using it, then when your church uses it, you get this. This is the teacher's manual. Only the churches who are using it actually get the teacher's manual in writing. You don't really need it if you're not using it. All right, so now the first part is called reflection. The second part is expansion. I'm in there teaching today's lesson. I encourage the students to seek ways to apply the lesson, look for implications of the lesson, challenge them to engage in at least the 3 conversations we've talked about. Okay? See, once you begin discussing the lesson, your mind opens up for opportunities unbelievable. And once you begin discussing it, that's why in the area of academics, there are discussion sessions. But you got to give people something to discuss if they don't have any information. So you are discussing the information that you have received. For example, if I said to you, I want you to break up into small groups and discuss some of the information I've given you today. Or if I said, break up into a small group and discuss my explanation of what it means to be a hypocrite. See, then that's what you get up and discuss. But now, before I gave you that information, if I had said, I want you all to discuss a hypocrite, then see, you'd be all over the place. So what you're doing now is simply having structured discussion that follows some guidelines. But we can't have that until you give me some information. For example, if someone said to me, I want you to get together, let's discuss the economic condition in Deerfield Beach, Florida. I don't know a thing about what's here. As I've tried to guess careers of what you all are doing. You see how far off base I am. I'm trying to find out and see if I'd have found out from you all, what do you do? Then I would have actually had a much more accurate basis by which to draw examples from. Okay? I was over in Tampa. They used to have those cigars over there, the Cuban cigars. And I think when they left, the economy hadn't recovered yet from Cuban cigars. Now that's the format of the class. Now, there are 3 different formats for the lesson. And I've done this to make the lesson teaching simple. Now, here is the first format. The teacher takes those 40 minutes, stand up in front of you and give you information and example and explain, which is kind of like what I've done today. That's one format. Now, I'm going to recommend that you alternate formats from one week to another. Don't use one format all the time. It gives variety to the class, and it brings excitement into the class. Oh, you know what? I didn't get your question, brother. You asked a question before we took a break, and I was supposed to come back to your question.
The question was, we talked about young kids and teenagers, but we really didn't get into college kids or high school. When they go to high school, when they go to the high schools of learning, and they you know, they get involved in this postmodern culture.
Yeah.
Postmodern.
I would recommend, years ago, I developed for my high school seniors a curriculum specifically for them to address that, getting them prepared for the atheistic influence that they're going to find in college. So I recommend every church, you take your high school seniors and put them in a class, and maybe even the juniors, put them in a class where you're getting them ready. Because when they go to the state university, none of their instructors don't believe there is a God, sit up in class and make fun of church and God and everything. And if your child is not armed to deal with that, their faith will diminish. So you need a curriculum specifically for that. Yeah, that's very important. That's very important.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, so one format for the lesson class is the teacher does a teaching. A second format is divide the class into groups of about 7 students each. And in each group, you give them a set of questions from the lesson to discuss. For example, you're studying forgiveness. We divide the class up. We got 7 over here, and 7 over there, and 7 over there, and 7 over there, and 7 over here. And so we give you a question, discuss, and you guys collectively answer this question and write down the answer. So that means the 7 people sitting over here got to discuss among themselves. This group over here, they may have the same question, or they may have a different question. And so they are discussing among themselves the question. So they spend 30 minutes discussing that question. And then we spend 10 minutes sharing what you come up with. So we have forced the students over here to take the information in the lesson they have studied and use it in their discussion. All right? So format number 2, the small groups are answering questions. Everybody got that? Format number 3, we divide up into groups just like that. And instead of answering questions, they are over there creating questions. Because for every lesson you study, there's a ton of questions that come in your mind. And it's a learning experience to create questions. Because now the teacher knows what are the unanswered questions from the text. So there are 3 different formats for teaching this. And you use, for example, let's say if on the first Sunday you teach, you use format number 1. The next Sunday you use format number 2. That brings excitement into the class. Third week, use a different format. Because people sometimes, that also gives the students an opportunity to share what they have discovered from the lesson. Now, you'll have a couple of students in there who didn't study the lesson. They're going to mouth on and mouth on. But what you do is you got to always bring that back to, that comment must be justified by the lesson. And that comment looks good and sounds good, that's not connected to the lesson here. Well, I think you ought to put people on a 6-month probation before you forgive them. Where'd you get that from the lesson? Now, this is the way I feel. Well, this is not about how you feel. This is about from the lesson. It's from the information in the lesson and the scriptures that was provided. What biblical basis do you get that from? So this gives the 3 different lesson formats. And I'm telling you, it will ignite and lighten up your class. Any questions? Yes.
How does this, I teach pre-K, 3 to 5-year-olds.
This ain't designed for them.
No, right.
This is, I'm speaking specifically now about blueprints that's designed for age 16 and up.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I do have a curriculum. I have access to a curriculum that's called Kingdom Kids. It is designed for age 2 up through I believe, the 6th or the 7th grade. It is researched. It is the most professional, proficient curriculum. And you get a copy of it, and then you just make all the copies you need for your class. Matter of fact, I contacted the company, and they gave me permission to sell that. Matter of fact, the people that produced it don't produce it anymore. They don't actually, they abandoned the curriculum. But I have, and you can go in and however many students you have, and it is enough in each lesson. It's enough information almost in there for a whole month, even though it's designed for one class. With the Kingdom Kids curriculum, you will never run out of material.
No.
You can't possibly cover that material. I recommend people who use that to use it for Sunday and Wednesday. But now you got to make your own copies because that's it. But it is how that curriculum was produced. They took people in the education system who were Christians and put a team of people. So they had a team of Christian educators working on the 2-year-old curriculum. Another team of educators working on the 3-year-old curriculum. Another team of educators working on the first grade curriculum. And it is the best curriculum I have ever discovered. And it can ultimately end up being the most economical almost, because churches who use it, they give me an annual fee, and then they make as many copies as they want. They got it. One time, small paper, and they're good to go. And I give it to them on a zip drive, and they stick it in and just make copies. It's designed for the children to take home handouts that their parents are to work with them on. All kinds of, it's awesome. It is really. Now, yes?
You said the fee is yearly?
No, one time.
One time?
You buy a one-time fee,
Yeah.
and you got the curriculum. It's a 4-year or a 5-year curriculum.
Okay.
So, and it's thematic. It's step building, and so when you get it, you have the whole. It's either 4 or 5 years. You got it. And it might look a little steep initially, but over 5 years, yes, sir, it's really small. Now, one of the advantages of that, and this is, and I'm not trying to necessarily tell you to use the Kingdom, there's a lot of good curriculum out there, that's just one that I happen to be familiar with. And one of the advantages of blueprints, so you can pick out the lessons you're going to study next year. You can pick out as far ahead as you want to. So you can assign your teacher, you can say, okay, you're going to be teaching next year in January. Here's the curriculum we're going to teach. So you can start studying your lessons now.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have to wait till like a month before the new curriculum comes out from Gospel Advocate or New Member. And then you get a chance to design the direction, what you're going to study, and the curriculum is available. So now the teacher has plenty preparation time. Because I understand how it is to get your lesson today or to get your lesson 2 weeks, and you get so busy this week. But this allows you to lay out your lesson, and I would recommend to every church to lay out your curriculum at least 2 quarters in advance. So every one of your teachers got at least 3 months. So since you got 3 months, you ain't got no excuse for teaching no sorry class you did. You had your lesson 3 months ago, and you come here and you don't know what you're doing. You had 3 months. You could have looked up, there should be no words in that lesson you don't know the meaning to. You had 3 months to look it up. And see, when you have your lessons like that, listen to this. Wow, I get all excited, you know. I just get excited. See, here is what happens. When you get your lessons in advance, you get a chance to wear your lesson. You get a chance to incubate your lesson. So now, I know what I'm going to be teaching. Okay, I'm teaching a lesson on forgiveness. And I start teaching in September. So now I start looking for forgiveness illustrations.
That's right, that's right.
So I overheard some children talking. That's a good illustration for the lesson I'm going to be teaching in September on forgiveness. So when you walk into class, you are excited, you ready. and you have a living lesson. You have a living lesson. Listen, let me tell you this. You know how, let me talk to Brother Warren. You know, we invite preachers in, they come in and preach, and they do a fantastic job, and the members are all excited. You know why he did such a fantastic job? That's a lesson he's already preached 2 years ago. We had a lot of time to work on it. But your preacher, he didn't have 2 years for his sermon last Sunday. He only had a week. He didn't have a whole week because he had to go get you out of jail and then go visit you in the hospital. So he didn't listen. If a guy come in here and he knows he's going to do a gospel meeting 3 months away and he come in here, he ought to have a good sermon. He ought to have all kind of exciting illustrations or whatever. But you don't have that luxury doing it every week. But the curriculum now allows you to wear your sermon. And then not only that, your lesson. Now you can take that lesson and sit down and talk to your children. And they give you illustrations and stuff. So now you come into class, it's awesome. It's awesome. So getting your lessons in advance makes teaching so much easier. So now instead of cramming on Saturday night, I've been wearing this lesson in my mind for 3 months, looking for illustrations, talking to people. So now when you come into class, your class is so excited, your students can't wait to get there, and when the bell rings, you almost get mad because you got a whole lot more information you like. Rather than, oh man, somebody holding that clock, is the battery out of that clock? All right, let me stop here and take questions. We only got 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that there are no loose ends. While you're thinking of your questions, let me tell you what I have over here. I've published 11 books. Matter of fact, the 12th book is coming out in 2 weeks. 13 other guys, including myself, has written a book entitled Church Matters. Passionate pleadings that prepare us for the future. And what I told the other guys that are writing to do, I said, I want you to envision that you're talking to all of the preachers and all of the elders in churches of Christ. And you are talking to them about something that you think is important. We need to begin talking about. One guy wrote on how a church should select a preacher and how a preacher should select a church. I wrote on, the chapter I wrote on is entitled, We Have Discussed. No, it's entitled, Now What? We Have Discussed and We Still Disagree. So where are you now? How do I treat a brother when I have a difference of understanding? How do I treat you? How do I treat you? After we've looked at this text, I still don't see what you say you think you see in there. How do I treat you? That'll help the splintering and that kind of stuff. The one guy wrote on the women's role. But there are 14 different chapters, and the book will be available in about 2 weeks. You can go to the website. 11 other books that I've written. The first book I wrote was entitled Good and Angry. And you have an anger problem, and so you need the book. Now people say, how do you know she didn't have an anger problem? Because all of you have an anger problem. Now here's what your anger problem is. You're not angry enough. I've had people say, oh, you don't know me. No, your problem is you're not angry enough. That's the number one problem in America. People are not angry enough. If you had time, I could make that case and show you that. You're not angry enough. Not angry enough. And the reason we're not angry is because we're selfish. We're not angry. The second book I wrote is entitled The Power of the Tongue. What you say is what you get. You're where you are today because of the things you've been saying about yourself. So stop speaking negatively of yourself. If you walk in church tomorrow and somebody say you look good, don't say, oh, this old dress. No. You say, thank you. And in your mind, I agree with you. You wouldn't dare put on a dress and come out here if you didn't think you look good. You know how long it takes y'all to dress on Sunday because you didn't think you looked good. I grew up with a girl who's not going to go to church. She's not a member of the church, and I've been trying to get her to go to church. She lives in Memphis, and she said, I got her one Sunday. She made a promise she's going to go to church. She said, I got her, but everything I put on, nothing didn't look right. I said, come on. So you know how to. The third book is entitled Final Answer. Questions and answers that came into my TV program. I did a TV program for about 12 years. I was on national for about 5 years. Came on 1,100 TV stations. 1,100 cities across the nation. Final Answer. The fourth book is entitled God Listen. Prayers that God always answers. It's a book that teaches you how to pray.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in that book entitled Praying Scripture. Many people, we learn to pray by listening to people. Well, what if you're listening to bankrupt prayers? That's all you need. Trying to teach you how to pray. And in that book, there's a 50-day addiction recovery guide. Tell you what to do for 50 days in a row, and you can break any addiction. On the 50th day, you have a celebration. A woman that lived in Albany, Georgia. Matter of fact, she didn't buy the book. One of her co-workers had the book on the desk. She took the book and read it. Broke her eating disorder. She was 40-some years old. She had had a problem with sweets all of her life. Had an eating disorder. On the 50th day, when she did the celebration, she invited me to come down to Albany, Georgia for her celebration. So I know it works. People have done it. All right, there's another book entitled Show Me the Money. 7 exercises that develop economic strength. If you have grown children and they ask you for money, never give them a dime until they read that book. If they follow that book, they will not need to get your money anymore. So you do yourself. The idea behind that book of Show Me the Money is the reason people have money problems, it has very little to do with your income. It has to do with your perception and managing it. See, most people imagine they have more money than they do. I had a couple in for counseling one time, and they were having conflict, and they sat down and they was having money issues. When they finished putting that little budget together on paper, he had $2,800 a month left over. She had $700 a month left over. I said, why are you guys having problems with $3,500 a month left over? How are you guys having financial problems? So we sat there for a while, and it dawned on him. Now listen to this. This will help you. He was a truck driver. He owned 2 trucks. He had forgotten to put on paper one of his truck notes, which was $700 a month. Now, when I kept asking, do you have bills? Oh man, yeah, I forgot. We do have this. By the time we kept on working on that, her $750 went down to about $200. His $2,800 went down to $900. But see, the problem was, in his mind, he was spending like he got $2,800 every month when he only had $7. That's why he kept staying in trouble. So Show Me the Money makes you see your money. You cannot manage what you cannot see. So, when your children come to you for money, show me where your money went. If you can't show me where your money went, then mine ain't going that direction. All right? You don't know where your money went? You ain't gonna know where mine went. Now, I've been blessed. I've got 4 grown children. My baby is 30 years old. 3 sons. 2 of them are married, and 1 will get married this summer. My daughter's not married, but they are financially independent. My children have never asked me to give them money. Only 2 of my children I've ever had to loan some money to, and they paid back. 1 didn't pay it back. I canceled the debt. He lost his job, and so that put him in a situation. So that's kind of understandable. He had 4 children and lost his job, and I didn't mind giving him that. But 2 of my children have never ever asked me for a dime since they've been grown. Ever. Never. My daughter has never asked me for a nickel since she's grown. Never. Matter of fact, I've only given her $5 since she was 17. I train my children. When you get 18, I'll never give you a dime for socializing. I'll have to go to college, but I'll never give you money. Ever.
Wow.
Never. My brother thought, I can't believe you did that. I sure did. I drilled in my children from the day one that when you get 18, the day you turn 18, I will help you go to college. But I will never in your life, you can never come to me and say, Daddy, I need some money. I'll never pay your utility bill. I'll never do that. Ever. My children have never asked me to pay their bill for me. And I also told them that 6 months out of college, you have to pay rent to stay in this house. That's right. That's right. My daughter paid $250 a month. And see, it finally dawned on them. I'm paying $250 a month, and I ain't got no authority here. I'm going to get my own house. Praise God. That's what I wanted. It dawned on my children. I'm paying $250, and all I have is a room. I can't even turn my stereo up loud at night. All I got is a room. And that is exactly what that was designed to do.
Right.
So, matter of fact, the first month my daughter's rent was due, it was Wednesday night after Bible class. She came over, Daddy, I did something. Can I pay you Friday? I was going to start that stuff with me. I said, listen, I said, you going to pay Sears on time, and you going to pay me on time. She went back across the hall, wrote my check, brought it back over there, and did not backwards. Because I told them, I said on the 15th of the month, put my check on the dresser, I don't ever want to ask for it. See, what I was really doing, they don't know it. I was training them to be responsible. I really would have helped them, but they thought I wouldn't, so they never asked. And so they became independent. And so when my children get ready to buy a car, I don't know they bought it until they show up. They get to buy a house, they don't ask me for nothing. And that's what I wanted. Now, there's some times I kind of wanted to help them, but they didn't ask. It's like, man, I trained them too well almost. All right, show me the money. Then there's a book entitled Success as a God Idea. I teach you how to be successful. And there's a chapter in that book on how to forgive. Do you not realize that one of the reasons why people have difficult succeeding, they have unforgiveness. There's somebody they're holding grudge and resentment toward, and they cannot success. You ever thought maybe your beauty shop doesn't flourish because you have resentment towards your sister or your brother? You can't get a promotion on your job because you have resentment towards somebody at a job you had 10 years ago. And I teach you how to deal with opposition. Because once you start succeeding, you're going to have some player haters. And if you cannot handle that, you cannot succeed. Because buzzards are always envious of eagles. But I tell you what, you have never seen an eagle down on the ground fighting with buzzards about the stuff they eat. There's a book, right? Title, God knows there is no need to worry. People you know who worry, you got to get them a copy of that book. I even have a chapter in that book because, see, I know some people are going to keep worrying. So I put a chapter in that book that tells you how to worry first class. So since you're going to worry anyhow, here's how you do it. There's a chapter in the book, how to worry first class. Then there's a book entitled, My God, Who He Is Will Change Your Life. And then there's 2 volumes of Faith, Family, and Finances. We talk about faith issues, family issues, finance issues. Volume 1 and Volume 2. I'm going to do 10 more volumes of that book somewhere. I'm going to do 12 volumes total. And then the last book, who's in here not married? Everybody here is married? Who's unmarried? Raise your hand if you're unmarried. You know, probably in the Atlanta area, it's the exact opposite. I doubt there's any church that has 30% of their members married. It's just a difference in children. Well, some of you may have daughters and granddaughters and sons that need to read this book. It's a book entitled A Queen in Search of a King. Subtitle, Go Ahead and Ask Him for a Date. Yeah, that's what everybody does. They look good. I don't think a woman ought to ask a man for a date. Y'all do it all the time. That's why you change your hairstyle. That's why you change the color of your dress. You were asking him for a date. That's why you went over by his door, by his office twice unnecessarily. Now watch this. Now I'm not gonna get into the book, but I'm just sharing one thing. I was in the bank and I shared with a lady. She said, "Oh no, I would never ask a man for a date. You gotta be kidding." I said, "Are you married?" She said, "Yeah." She had recently gotten married. I said, "How'd you meet your husband?" My niece introduced us. I said, "Oh, so your niece can look for your husband, but you can't." Your niece was out looking for your husband, setting up you a date, arranging you a date, but you can't. Your niece is looking for your husband, but you can't look for a husband. That just don't fit with me. Your niece know you weren't a husband. Your niece is out looking for you a husband. Your niece is talking to men about meeting you. But you can't do that for yourself. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. That's the reason. Now, let me take any lingering questions. Now, I'm going to be in this town until about Monday morning, and if you want to talk to me about anything, I'm available. Our conversations just has to take place at Cheesecake Factory, but beyond that, you know, I'm kidding. But I tell you, that pineapple cheesecake is awesome. But I'm kidding. If you have some questions about anything that I've said, or if you'd like to know how to apply something that I've said to a specific situations, Brother Ward got my number. Call me, I have no problem. I'm not doing anything unless I'm here to do whatever he asks me to do. If he want me to go with him and visit somebody that's sick, I'm open to whatever. We got a Bible study, whatever. So all you do is check with him, and if he approves you to talk to me, he'll tell you how to contact me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. Because when I leave this town, I just simply want you all to be benefited by my coming. And whatever I have to do that, I'm willing to do. Yes?
I was just wondering about elders in the Church of Christ.
I have a curriculum here. As a matter of fact, there's a church in South Carolina. I have 26 lessons on leaders. 26 lessons in my curriculum. Even have a procedure for ordaining elders. A particular procedure that I've used to ordain elders. And we talk lessons on deacons. And my suggestion would be to put the curriculum, teach the church, then everybody's informed. But if I didn't ask you a specific question, then go ahead.
Well, is it, if a church don't have an elder or deacon, can it still operate properly?
If a church doesn't have elders or deacon, can it operate properly? It had to operate properly to become a church. Because if it wasn't operating properly, it would never become a church. Now, one of the things, let me just read the topic on these lessons. Now, let me preface this by saying, I preached in Jackson, Tennessee. I ordained 3 elders and probably 6 deacons in 1992. And I'm glad to be able to say that all 3 of those elders are still successfully serving. In Decatur, Georgia, I ordained 5 elders and probably 15 deacons. Now, some of the deacons have resigned, some have died, and one of the elders has died, but the other 4 that I ordained are still successfully serving. If you add up the time of service of the elders that I have ordained, you'll get up in the neighborhood of somewhere around 200 years of experience altogether. So I'm saying that to say, I did not ordain people who served a couple of years and then got drove out of office. I ordained quality men who are serving, function well. But there's a big mistake that people have about elders. The best way to look at elders is to do this. Take decision-making off the table. Now look at elders. Most people's perspective of elders revolve exclusively around decision-making. So now, we put decision-making back on the table, but initially, we take it off and study it with decision-making off the table. So now you're an elder. What do you do on Monday? What do you do on Tuesday? You're an elder. What do you do outside of the business meeting? What do you do? Now we get a holistic look at the role of elders and deacons when we look at function. Now, the office of elders, don't become confused with the form over function. Form. Now, the question is, what do we expect? What will the elders do? And in many people's mind, elders, they make decisions. They make decisions. Well, you take decision-making off the table. Now, how do you see elders? See, most people don't have an issue. Most people, many people, and I'm not saying that's your position, but I'm saying because I travel over the country like this such a long time, many people's issue about elders is we don't want all this authority in the preacher's hand. Why not? Oh, you just can't have that much authority in one man's hand. Listen, and then people turn around and have 3 elders, and one of them will be the authoritative elder, and he'll make all of the decisions, and the other 2 just go along with it. You ain't changed nothing. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the way it ought to be, because I can honestly say that in the 12 years I preached in Decatur with elders, and the 3 years I preached in Jackson, Tennessee with elders, we operated by consensus in this sense. We never did anything that either one of the elders had a strong opposition to. We've come into meetings, and here are 5 elders and 6 of us sitting here, and we think that this is something that we really ought to do, and there's one elder who felt very strongly that we shouldn't do that. We put that on the table. We didn't say, well, 4 out of 5. No. Because I want him on board. We need to get this to the place where, even if he doesn't think this is the best idea, this is an idea he can go along with. And so, if we don't have to do it today. We decide we want to buy a church band. We ain't got to buy the band today. We can wait next month to buy it. If he thinks this is something we absolutely should not do, now, what's your reason? You share that with us. And we try to see that, but we don't get into this majority rule stuff. What the best way to function in a church is to try to get to the best idea. And sometimes the best idea comes from unexpected sources. Now, I'm telling you what I've done successfully in ministry. I preached in North Carolina. When I went there to preach, it's a military town. Fort Bragg is there, and Pope Air Force Base near Fayetteville. They had never had a full-time preacher. I was the first full-time preacher. The former guy who was the preacher was in the military, so he stepped down as the preacher. So the church decided he was going to get a full-time preacher. He was a really good guy, but do you know who had the best insight in that church? Was his wife. The former preacher's wife had a better perception mentally of everything about that church than anybody in there. She had a better perspective. She had a more spiritual perspective, and she had more insight than anybody in that church. So guess what? Before I ever implemented any ministry, I called Doris. Hey, Doris, what are you doing? Can I come over to your shop and talk to you? This is what I think I'm going to do. And she said, if you do that, you're going to irritate this situation. And JD, I don't think you ought to do that until, and then when she give her opinion, I might say, okay, I understand, I'm going to irritate these people, but I'm ready to take that risk. We're going to do that. I never implemented any ministry, and nobody, y'all the first church I've ever told this. Her husband don't even know this. Not a man in that church knew it. Because Doris knew, because her husband had been the preacher there for like 5 years, and she had sat back and watched. She had sat back and watched. And Doris was spiritual, and she would work. I could have called Doris and said, that's some paper on the ground. You come out and pick it up. She would come out and pick it up. Let me give you an attitude. Now, see, you're going to do this with spiritual people. Doris set up a clothes closet for the church. We told the newspaper came out to take pictures, etc., etc. Doris had everything set up. And so when the TV people showed up to take the pictures and everything, Doris got in her car and left. She wanted no publicity, no notoriety at all. She was only interested in the job getting done. I don't need nobody need no idea. And she set the whole thing up. As a matter of fact, she had a consignment shop. Most of the clothes in there, she brought them from her shop. But she wasn't interested. Yeah, I said, no. She wanted no attention. She was a spiritual-minded worker. So when you got people in that category, sit down with them and talk to them and find out what's going on. So sometimes it's not about who made the decision. It's what's the quality of the decision that was made. What is the quality of the decision? How do we get to the point where we have the most qualitative decision? My second son teaches high school. Listen, I've been teaching and preaching for 35 years. I trained him. But guess what? He's working on his PhD in management and leadership. So guess what? Eventually, I'm going to be sitting down with him saying, son, listen, when I do these workshops, what do I need to take into consideration in light of the present generation, how people think differently than they did when I was putting this stuff together? Right. So I'm going to ask him. I taught him, but I'm going to turn around and ask him. So when churches operate like that, now, every church needs to work toward elders. There's a tremendous value for elders who are elders. But the form of elders does not solve your dilemma. Yeah. I can show you churches all over this brotherhood that's been right down the middle that had elders. So it's not the man, it's the model. It's the model. So here's what causes conflict in churches. It's not always the people, it's the model you're using. It's the model. You can take good people, give them a bad model, and you'll mess up. I'm going to give you one other example, then I'll be through. When I moved to Decatur, Georgia to preach, I was the first black preacher. The church had been white in transition. There were 6 white elders. The Atlanta Inner City Ministry had asked the church to help support them. We had had a discussion, and the elders were not in favor of helping them at that meeting. A few weeks later, I ran into the preacher who was going to be doing the work at the Atlanta Inner City Ministry. He came up to me, thanking me for us helping them. I said, who told you that? I thought he had, I said, really? Yeah, brother so-and-so, which one of the elders? So y'all gonna give us $500 a month? I thought, he misunderstood. He gonna be heartbroken. So, he said, no, that's what he told me. So the next meeting I had with the elders, after we finished the meeting, I said, listen, did you guys tell Alfred that we were gonna help him? Yeah, brother, why should we? We're gonna give him $500 a month. So I sat across the table from those white elders and I said, don't you ever make a decision and tell somebody else before you tell me. Good men, bad model. Right. They looked at me and said, I can't believe we made that mistake. Oh man. So now out of that, they developed a communication process. Whenever the elders had a meeting, they put a note in my box what they decided last night. So when I came into the office in the morning, I knew exactly what they had decided, so nobody else ever knew before me. Because good people, bad model. Bad model. And that model wasn't going to work with me. That just wasn't going to work, period. Because I cannot be preaching for this church, and some preacher across town know we doing it. I don't even know it. That ain't going to work. That just ain't going to work. And listen, I'd only been on location 3 months. They were white. They were old enough for my daddy. But that ain't gonna work. Bad model. And not only bad model for me, that's a bad model, period. Bad model. Bad model. Ain't gonna work. Now, out of that, see what you do is you take conflict and develop a solution. That's great. So the rest of our time working together, whatever they discussed, if they came to any type of conclusion about anything, I came into the office the next day. They had already left a note in my box. We met last night and we gave brother so-and-so $500 to do thus and so I knew it. And that's the kind of things you have to do. Yeah. The model is so crucial. What elders, and this is why elders and preachers keep getting in trouble with, you got to negotiate your territory. So You know what my territory is, and I know what your territory is, so you don't be infringing on mine, and I don't infringe on yours. And my territory was everybody that came into that church to do any kind of preaching and seminar, that was my decision who it was, and all of that. And so, no problem. And I knew what their territory was, and they knew what mine. And we had a tremendous. But you gotta have preachers who ain't scared to tell people. I ain't scared. But it's not about me, and I probably shouldn't have said that way. It's really about developing a working model. So every time you have a conflict, you go back to the design. So we don't keep having this conflict. We don't keep having this conflict. For example, I'm very particular with who I ride with. I don't let people drive too fast and scare me in their car. So if you drive too fast and scare me in your car, I don't ride with you no more. So I got a design. Listen, I don't ride with people who need to leave 2 hours early so they can stop at 4 restaurants and eat. So it's a design. You get in your car and go. I get in my car and go. Riding with the windows down in the car stops up my signs. So if you want fresh air, fine, but you ride in your car and I'll ride in mine, and we won't fall out. It doesn't matter if we going the same 500 miles. So you put in place a design. Design. I let my sons, you don't wear my clothes, I don't wear yours. Because I get ready for a shirt, you wore this already, so we solve them. We don't keep on. So every time a conflict comes up, you need to learn to design out the problem. And that's what has to happen with elders. And people think that the problem is automatically solved because we have elders. They can be great spiritual men, but you got to have a model. If you don't have a good model, a husband and wife, good people, but they got to have a good model. For example, man gets married, wife thinks she's going to write the checks. He ain't going to write the checks. Both of them are accounting majors. But you got to have a model. And the model has to respect and take into consideration the fragileness of people involved. Now, I'll be around all day and talk about all that as long as you need me to. I've enjoyed sharing with you.